Bush Radio.
Bush Radio. Bush Radio.
Bush Radio.
Your real talk radio.
Daganan kilo betening home lo moham di beta maso sanalom muasa benge kaputo yeah.
State Affairs.
State Affairs with Edmund Obilo.
I am in pain. I am in severe pain. I can't touch this neck anymore. If anything happens to me, the Inspector General of Police to be held accountable.
Here we go.
State Affairs with Edmund Obilo is live. Stay tuned.
Professor Kperogi, you averred that Nigeria had the misfortune of being stuck in an unnaturally prolonged infancy. Yeah. Can it be said that Nigeria is not as old as you think?
59 is quite an advanced age. And there are several countries on earth that evolved about the same time as Nigeria, and that have made more progress in internal national cohesion than Nigeria has had. And so the point I wanted to make in that article is that after independence, the people who took over from the colonialists, the post-independence Nigerian leaders, did not act consciously to mold a national consciousness, to create enabling national myths to bring people together. And so a lot of our institutions, our symbolic resources, the things that make a nation are still the same things that were handed down to us by the colonialists.
So by implication, Nigeria remains a colonial state.
Absolutely. So we had the misfortune of colonialism, but we are not bound to be stuck by that misfortune. I have written several articles in the past to show a lot of the linkages, cultural, historical linkages between several ethnic groups that can be exploited to create a national consciousness. I live in the United States of America, which is also people who come from different identities, different backgrounds, different races. But somehow there's a national myth, there's an American national myth that everyone subscribes to, that everyone is inculcated with, that everyone learns from like the elementary school. And so everyone grows up here with an American consciousness at a minimum. Of course, they have their dissensions, they have national disagreements, we have the North-South dichotomy, just like we have in Nigeria for the most part. But there's an American national consciousness, which is so this is conscious. It doesn't erupt out of thin air. Some people, a vanguard of people, have to come along and consciously cultivate this consciousness and get everyone to subscribe to it. And there's a lot about our history, about our sociology, about our relations that can be exploited to create this.
Are you saying there is no Nigerian identity?
There's no consciously constructed Nigerian identity. What exists is an amalgam of identities. It's more about what people think of us than what we think of ourselves. So what I was suggesting, and it starts from really basic inconsequential things, inconsequential on the surface, like having a national flag that reflects our values as a nation, that is a product of our national conversation, like having a national anthem that we can relate to, like having a name that comes from within us, like having, a history of our people, of our evolution as a people, historically, pre-colonial times, that we all can relate to. That does not exist. People talk about history being cancelled in Nigerian secondary schools. That's a very inaccurate claim. Even when history wasn't cancelled, it wasn't compulsory. It was not. And the history that was even taught before it was suspended was not the sort of history, the sort of historiography that encourages the evolution of a national consciousness. So when people criticize the lack of history in our schools, they're being a little inaccurate. In the United States, everyone takes history from elementary school up until university. It does not matter what your major is. You can be studying chemistry or medicine or anything else, you take history. And it's a nationalist history.
When we discuss subjects like this,
Yes.
there is this opinion that we tend to relegate the significance of our colonial experience.
No, that's not true. In fact, it's precisely the colonial experience that should instigate the sort of conversation I'm talking about. The United States, for instance, had a colonial experience, a brutal colonial experience, and that was what propelled them to have an identity that was separate from and distinguished from the mother country, the British mother country. So American English evolved out of a rebellion against the standards of British English. The notion of an American identity, was constructed intentionally in opposition, in contradistinction to the British identity. So what I'm saying is, you can create. Singapore is another example of a recently colonized country. It's an island country, but the leaders that emerged post-independence consciously try to bring the people together. It's multi-ethnic. They chose the English language as the national language, as the language of instruction at schools, and it transitioned from a third world country to a first world country. And what it did was to create a sense of nationalism, a sense of oneness. Of course, that does not mean that we are not going to have disparities. It does not mean that we are not going to have disagreements and there are ethnic divisions and strife and religious differences. That is human. Those things can never be eliminated anywhere in the world. But we are talking about the base. Let's have a conversation about ourselves, because however much we might disagree with each other and hate each other's guts, it doesn't seem to me that it would be possible to dissolve the Nigerian state. That's my own personal opinion. So if that is not the case, if that's not going to be possible, why don't you come together and create a nation that works for us? It starts from little things like this.
You said Nigeria has one of the world's worst designed flags.
But it does. And I've given my reasons for that. One, we have, as I said, the flag does not have a lot of symbolic meaning. It does not reflect our singularities as a nation, our uniqueness as a people, the cultural complexities we embody. It doesn't have it. It was designed that the design of the flag was supervised by colonialists. It was not designed in post-independence Nigeria. And the original designer of the flag said he put something sun, like the symbol of the sun, to capture the the sun in Nigeria, and it was removed by the colonialists who supervised it. And so there's a lot of creativity deficit in the design of the flag. And what I'm suggesting, when I wrote about this much earlier, people say that's so insignificant, that's so trivial. And that's precisely the problem. That a lot of things we think are trivial, are insignificant, have a lot of symbolic value. And when people don't have a sense of their self, then everything else collapses.
You want a product of a post-independent effort.
Yes. Our national currency changed. In the late 70s, our national anthem changed. That was good, but that's about it. Nothing else changed. Even when it's not original to us.
But we have seen arguments around issues of institutions that
Yes.
what states require is good institutions and everything else will follow. And Nigeria is building its institutions. With time, don't you think everything else will follow?
Is Nigeria, what institutions are Nigerians or is Nigeria building? I don't think of any. Most of the institutions that exist are colonially inherited institutions. We have not interrogated these institutions to see if they are relevant to our local needs. And we don't even have institutions because everything revolves around personalities. A president can come and make and unmake. And so when people talk about institutional structures, about the strength of institutions, it means that those institutions exist irrespective of who is the leader. And that in fact, they can even hold the leaders accountable to the people. That's what that means. And I don't see that in Nigeria. I don't see institutions that are independent enough to call people in power to question. So we don't have institutions, and we need to build institutions that will outlast individuals, personalities in power, temporary occupants of the seat of power. That's what that means. We don't have that.
Let's look at the green, white, green flag again.
Yes.
You are not happy with the green color of the flag. You said Nigeria is no longer an agricultural country. I wonder why.
Well, it's because of our over-reliance on the cheap money from gas, from petrol. Agriculture no longer accounts for the resources that sustain the nation. And that's increasingly happening. And every government that has come in Nigeria has talked of diversifying the economy, of centralizing agriculture once more. But that never happens. And while it makes sense to call ourselves an agricultural country in the First Republic, we no longer are.
But Mr. President talks about Nigeria going back to agriculture.
Exactly. He's just one of a long list of heads of states and presidents who have said the same, and nothing ever happens. So until we get to that point, to the point of actually doing it and seeing the results and not promising, then we can be said to be an agricultural country.
So if we did that, then we can leave the green on the flag, right?
Yeah, well, that, so the argument I made in the article is that when there are fleeting resources, there are things that are fleeting, they come and go. Agriculture, peace, whatever. This, I thought they should capture on the flag something that is abiding, something that exists and will continue to exist because it's a part of us. It's a distinct part of who we are as a people, our singularities as a people, our uniqueness. And therefore, it does not matter what happens, it's still going to be that. But green is not unique to even agriculture. Even that were to become agriculture, that's not unique to Nigeria. So many other communities are agricultural. The United States exports a lot of food, it's very agricultural. A lot of African countries are agricultural. That is not unique to us. And so that my argument is that a flag should do more than capture fleeting strengths. It should be enduring strength of the nation, enduring uniqueness of the nation.
You are also not comfortable with the white color of the flag. You don't agree that there is peace in Nigeria.
Do you?
But we live here, we drive our cars here, we go to work. We are not dead yet.
Yet. Well, that's an admission that something is not right. Well, but to that extent, you would say that of almost everywhere in the world. So it's, again, not unique to Nigeria. But in our own case, we have the additional burden of having episodic eruptions of violence in most parts of the country, kidnapping here, Boko Haram there, and there's a sense of siege that a lot of people feel in Nigeria. And I would not say peace is something that is so unique to Nigeria that it deserves to be captured on a national flag with the color white.
So
Again,
basically, we should throw away the flag.
Design a new one. Let's have a national conversation about how our national flag would be. We have a lot of experts who are imaginative, graphic artists. So that's basically my argument. But of course, a lot of people think that's trivial, and that's always they're going to say it's trivial.
You also want a new name for Nigeria.
Yes, it is also a colonial holdover. The name is a colonial holdover. There's absolutely no reason why we should be known as Nigeria. It was given to us by colonialists. Many countries, many post-colonial countries on earth, that got independence from their previous colonial overlords, have changed the names of their countries. And I gave the example of Ghana as an example of an African country that renamed itself after a previous glorious pre-colonial African empire, the Empire of Ghana, the Ghana Empire. So they adopted it, although most of contemporary Ghana was not a part of the Ghanaian Empire, but it was the pride that they took in the successes and glories of Ghana, the Ghanaian Empire, that inspired Kwame Nkrumah and his comrades to adopt the name Ghana for their country. Benin Republic was never a part of the Benin Empire. The president of Benin Republic at the time, the military head of state, Matthew Kerekou, decided that Dahomey, which used to be the name of the country, was the name of an empire in the southern part of the country, and that it did not reflect the cultures and histories of everyone in that country. So he chose the name of an African empire that did not have anything to do with the people in contemporary Republic of Benin. And he came to Nigeria, contemporary Nigeria's Benin Empire, and named it after that. And so I was saying, we don't have to name Nigeria after a previous pre-colonial empire, but we can come up with a name that is creative, that captures our essence as a people, our history, but not a colonially given name that is entangled in all sorts of controversies about its origins and meanings and things like that.
Some would say even if you changed the name, would it make any difference?
Yes.
Benin changed its name, Ghana did, but these are poor African countries till the moment.
That's the usual argument that, well, this is trivial, this is inconsequential, it doesn't change anything. But it's not. People don't do things only because it's going to bring material benefits. That's what I call the instrumentalist view of life of itself. You don't do things because it's going to bring you food. Man does not live by bread alone. There's more to life than eating, and by material prosperity. And there's such a thing as intangible benefits of things. When people have a sense of self-worth, I've seen very poor people who have a huge sense of self-worth, and I've seen prosperous people who have a low sense of self-worth. So we don't look at things, the importance of things from the perspective of their material benefits. So it's true, Ghana is not any richer than it was when it was called Gold Coast, but people in Ghana have a higher sense of self-worth for not being called Gold Coast. Most of Nigeria used to call the Slave Coast. We could as well have retained that name and say, hey, we are Slave Coast. It doesn't make a difference. We are not slaves anymore. But that name, Slave Coast, did a lot of violence, or would do a lot of violence on the self-esteem of anyone who lives in those areas. And to be called Nigeria, which is a colonially given name with contested history of meaning, does a lot of violence to the self-esteem of any self-conscious Nigerian. So although changing the name will not bring any benefits in material terms to people, it's going to benefit them in intangible forms in terms of their self-esteem. So we should move away from this idea of thinking that things are beneficial only if they bring material prosperity. There's more to a man, to a human being, than his material prosperity.
Professor Farooq Kperogi, thank you for featuring on State Affairs.
Thanks for having me.
Bush Radio, the home of history.